Country called Europe being created. The German Chancellor says there will be war if Europe fails. Tonight we ask, will Britain meet its Waterloo? Uniting Europe. We've been here before.
People who don't understand their history cannot understand the present and cannot form the future.
As ever, Britain's kind of Europe stands in the way.
It is time now to ask this question inside Europe. What kind of Europe do we want to build?
Those men on grey horses are terrifying.
Uniting Europe is always bloody.
That could cause also a major political crisis in Europe.
The old guard has broken!
He had met his Waterloo.
This is the beginning of the end of the European dream.
European history. Wars. Wars for a united Europe. A united Europe to stop wars. On the battlefield of Waterloo today, Bonaparte is history, and we don't mention more recent wars. The fight now is to unite Europe by agreement. But down the road in Brussels, a former Commission official has observed gathering conflict for nearly 20 years.
There has been a huge amount of political and intellectual capital invested over almost 50 years in the idea of a European Union. And I think that means in the idea, ultimately, of a European superstate, the creation of a new European nation.
A country called Europe.
A country called Europe. That if Britain appears to be standing in the way of realising that ambition, there is going to be tremendous ill feeling.
This country called Europe already has citizens. Look at your passport. The country called Europe already has a capital, Brussels. There they talk openly of Europe, your country. It has a constitution in the treaties like Rome and Maastricht. It even has a kind of government, the Commission and Council in Brussels, and a directly elected parliament. It already aspires to a common foreign policy and is equipping itself with its own armed forces. And soon it's also getting its own money, the euro, due to start in 1999. And like any country, it has an anthem and a flag.
To work together, we need consensus, tools, decision-making process, but also symbols. And one of these symbols are the flag.
Is Europe a nation?
No, Europe is a sort of commonwealth, no more.
Votre pays.
Yes.
A country called Europe comes under many different names, but its leaders prefer not to spell it out for fear of unsettling the natives. Vague phrases are safer. Community, union, unification, a united Europe, political union, integration, federation, and even commonwealth are supposed to blur the reality. But make no mistake about it, this is a country in the making. Beer hall on the continent, British visitors make it only too obvious why this real aim has to be camouflaged. They don't want to be European.
I want a British passport, not a European passport. I'm not European, I'm English.
It's Europe against us, isn't it? They want to change everything that's good about our country, even down to bananas and sausages.
Yeah, again?
Joking it.
I think Europe was fine as long as it was stuck to its original name, the European Economic Community, rather than going for this political and monetary union, which I think has been forced by probably France and Germany, perhaps.
It says in the Maastricht Treaty that you're a European citizen.
No, I'm not. I won't accept that. I'm English. It's as simple as that. If we had a referendum tomorrow, we'd be out of Europe by the end of April.
In this battle, the British government faces opinions like that on one flank and the French and German drive to full European unification on the other. Its strategy is to sit tight, confident that public opinion in the rest of Europe will cause the whole problem to melt away because it'll give the country called Europe the thumbs down.
Increasingly, the peoples of Europe, if not yet their governments, are moving in a similar direction. There is a great historic process at work. There is a great debate going on throughout Europe. That debate may be slightly more voluble in this country than in some other countries, but it is already happening in France and in Germany and elsewhere.
This is Germany, southern Germany, and we're here to find out whether the people of Europe really are moving Britain's way, as Mr. Rifkin says. For the people of Europe, there could hardly be a bigger issue. Attempts to unite their continent date back centuries. On Christmas Day in the year 800, Charlemagne crowned himself Holy Roman Emperor, uniting Europe for his lifetime. Now, the mission of uniting it forever has been taken on by the European Union's second Intergovernment Conference, or IGC, which has just begun. Whether or not the conference called Maastricht II will succeed in putting the finishing touches to the constitution of a country called Europe will really be decided here in Germany. If Germany decides to go ahead with political and monetary union, then the European nation will be born. If Germany backs off, it may never happen. Near Germany's western border with France, the ancient city of Heidelberg offers a respected old boy a sentimental welcome home. He's a man for whom uniting Europe is the most deadly serious thing in life, not the stuff of the slapstick comedy it sometimes seems in British politics. He just happens also to be Germany's Prime Minister for 14 years and the hero of German unification. Today's would-be Charlemagne is Helmut Kohl.
The most important thing is to maintain peace and freedom. Francois Mitterrand, with whom I stood on this square not long ago, said in his last big speech, "The return to nationalism, that is war." And he is right.
At Mitterrand's funeral this year, Kohl mourned not only a friend, but also a fellow warrior against the nationalism he hates and fears. And he'd lost his great partner in the Franco-German special relationship at the heart of Europe. He had cause enough to weep. But their historic deal was intact. Kohl gave France a finger on German economic policy by agreeing to the new euro money, and in return Mitterrand agreed to back Kohl's great project, the political union of Europe. Kohl's roots in the industrial Rhineland explained the man. He mentions the war in every second speech, and he experienced it right here. He still lives here, returning most weekends without ostentatious security or other signs of grandeur. He's a regular churchgoer where he meets his own people, mainly middle-aged and looking to the west. He went to school here and grew up with those who are still his neighbours and friends in the political centre supporting the government. He helped rebuild the church, having pulled bodies out of its cellars with his own hands after the wartime bombing. These memories are still vivid and important for most of the congregation, and for none more than Helmut Kohl himself.
Sein Bruder ist in der Normandie gefallen.
His brother was killed fighting in Normandy during the Second World War. His death affected Helmut Kohl very strongly and has influenced his political attitudes towards Europe. He says that a war like this in Europe must never happen again. The people of Europe must never fight each other again. Families must never be destroyed the way they were in the Second World War.
Helmut Kohl has named his son after his brother.
Chancellor, thank you very much.
History, he says, mustn't repeat itself.
Wir wollen nie wieder Krieg.
We don't want to have war
Und wir
again.
werden keinen Krieg in Europa dann haben, wenn wir in Europa uns zusammenschließen.
And we only will avoid war if we really achieve a union.
Und das Letzte, was ich Ihnen gerne sagen möchte für die Zuschauer und Zuhörer von BBC,
And the last thing I'd like to emphasize, particularly to a British audience.
Ich wäre als Brite eigentlich froh, wenn die Deutschen heute so denken.
If I were a British person, I'd be happy if the Germans would think the way I just put forward.
Sind Sie doch froh, dass wir heute so sind?
Be happy that we are the way we are now.
Am Ende dieses Jahrhunderts.
At the end of the 20th century.
The other side of the German debate about Europe, the opposition to coal, is at first harder to find. Germans think twice, and then 3 more times, before disagreeing with their own government. Campaigning against the new euro money in local elections is hard work.
There is no open debate like in Britain. It's more subliminal, more subterranean, because there's a fear to make Germany look as a spoiler of European integration. The interesting data do not come out of the debate, they come out of public opinion. And public opinion gives us regular 2/3 majorities against monetary union.
But with 2/3 of the voters against the new money, there has to be a political opportunity for anyone who'll champion that cause. The official opposition, the SPD, decided to test the water in the local elections in South Germany.
Mr. Kohl is destroying stability in Europe, and he is destroying the development of the political union in Europe if he makes a currency, a European currency, against the majority of our people.
Money is a gut issue for Germans. The German mark symbolizes Germany's economic miracle after the war and has been the great thing Germans were allowed to be proud of, despite all the guilt.
Wir haben unser Deutschland aufgebaut und sonst niemand.
We built up Germany. Nobody helped us. Back in 1945, we were given 10 marks a month so we could rebuild the country. Today, we're at the top of the tree, and now we're being asked to share it out. We don't mind helping out, but this kind of sharing isn't fair. The people are very bitter.
Die Bevölkerung ist verbittert.
Storm and Stress was the name given by Germany's best-known poet to the work that made his name, and it describes what the German people feel about the threat to their beloved German mark. But it isn't certain, even in the shadow of the soaring headquarters of the new euro money, that they'll bring themselves to vote against their usual assumption that the man in Bonn knows best. But a more sinister threat to the government's strategy comes from the fear that economic problems will strangle the new money at birth. Could this be true? I asked the great panjandrum of Germany's money himself, the man who also wrote the constitution of the new euro bank.
Looking from today, it looks very much as if the whole thing will be postponed, that one would say this is a face-saving operation. Well, it's not over, but it's postponed. In my view, postponement, a delay, could easily lead to the end of it, because it's a matter of credibility. We missed already the first date. The first deadline was 1997. That's very often forgotten. And so I think that a delay could easily lead to the end of the whole exercise.
But the indefinite postponement of the new euro money could threaten Kohl's whole strategy for the creation of the country called Europe. For his agreement to the new European money was the price he promised to pay for French support of political union.
Both President Chirac and Chancellor Kohl, I'm deeply convinced, want stronger ties between France and Germany, which means a continuation of this process of European integration. And Germany and France are in the heart of it, that's no doubt. Both are strongly determined to continue, but of course they also are confronted with the facts of life. And if unemployment is rising further and recession is getting deeper, etc., there could be a situation where they have no choice, where they have to accept a delay But then that could cause also a major political crisis in Europe, because some people will look for scapegoats. And they will say, well, they do not want Europe really, they are not ready to sacrifice, they do not really stick to their word, etc. This kind of arguments.
Everybody I meet in Germany says in 1998, the spring, Chancellor Kohl will postpone monetary union. It will not happen.
Den ich in Deutschland treffe, glaubt, dass im März 1998 die Währungsunion aufgeschoben wird.
Are they wrong?
Haben die Recht oder Unrecht?
Ich glaube nicht, dass das so ist.
He does, Mr. Chancellor is emphasizing that what you heard in Germany is not the way the German public is discussing that affair.
Ich glaube auch nicht, dass alle Deutschen Ihnen das gesagt haben.
And Mr. Chancellor doesn't think that all Germans you met put forward that opinion.
Sie sind ein bekannter Journalist.
You're a very well-known journalist.
Und Journalisten hören meistens das, was sie hören wollen.
And journalists are mostly only hearing what they want to hear.
Mr. Chancellor, thank you very much. Thank you. Long-serving heads of government are only being told what they want to hear. Even so, Mr. Kohl can't contemplate any postponement without jeopardizing his great deal with the French. Berlin, once again the designated capital of United Germany, and a point from which new visions of Germany's future are being constructed. It's the natural centre, too, of Helmut Kohl's other opposition, the one in the east. Whole city blocks, like the new Potsdamer Platz, Berlin's equivalent of Mayfair, leap out of the architect's computer simulations, and political ideas are likewise liberated. From Berlin, rising again as Germany's new capital, it all seems very different. From Bonn, Brussels and the European Union seem just up the road, just down the river. From here, it's Poland that's less than 50 miles away, and you can understand why German imperial policy tended to look east with both apprehension and appetite. Today, Berlin is the natural home of Chancellor Kohl's critics, who say that Germany is a nation again. That, like other countries, it has its own national interests, some of them in the east, and that these should not be submerged in a country called Europe, ruled from Brussels. Here in the shell of the historic Reichstag building, the United Germany's parliament will soon be rehoused, and Berlin, as the old capital of Prussia and Imperial Germany before the calamitous world wars, reminds its citizens of its past as a great nation. And that clashes with Kohl's credo that the only alternative to Hitler's philosophy is a totally European identity considering only European interests.
If you are a critic of Maastricht, they call you anti-European. And if you are anti-European, you are nationalistic. And if you're nationalistic, you will provoke war. So you are some dangerous person. And this debate is a very German debate.
The young want to escape from the past, and they ask, why shouldn't Germany be a country just like any other?
Which is not situated on the model.
Tim Varnholz is an architect and belongs to Chancellor Kohl's own party. He claims that a majority of the young Berlin members disagree with Kohl and don't share his great hatred of all nationalism, however innocuous.
I don't know who said that the Germans only know the extremes between they are extreme nationalists or they are extreme anti-nationalists. And I think now we have the possibility that Germany this time will be just a normal nation with normal patriotism and with a government that only tries to fulfill its main aims in the interests of the nation.
Germany couldn't be a normal nation so long as it was divided by the Berlin Wall and the Cold War for which it stood. Those were the conditions in which Helmut Kohl's message that Germany must lose itself in Europe was conceived and sold. On this wasteland, almost all vestiges of the gardens of Hitler's office and the bunker where he died are now gone, and his ghost, for so long used to scare Germans into accepting a two-way choice, him or Europe, grows feebler for each generation.
I think there is the possibility of a third way, of a way in the middle, which means we stay a sovereign state in a confederation of European states, which was Charles de Gaulle called it Europa der Vaterländer, the Europe of fatherlands. And I think this is our vision of Europe here in Berlin.
The Berlin Wall, even when it served East Berliners as a picture gallery, shut off the East. Now the way is open. And just as the city's history reminds them of its old identity, its natural geography encourages its people to think of Germany's special interests. The crumbling old East Berlin is a daily reminder that that way lie half Germany's historic neighbours, still outside the European Union.
There are so many East European countries, states, who want to be integrated and are waiting out of the door. And if we now create a common currency for Europe, the door will be locked more than before. So I think that Germany must be a friend, not only for Russia, but even more for Poland and Czechia and Hungary, because the Hungarians, they made the German unity possible because they opened their border, and so we should help them come in.
One fear is that economic breakdown in these countries may cause millions of job-hungry workers to head west. To stop them might require a German nightmare, a new wall facing the other way and manned by German guards. The Oder River divides Germany from Poland, and it brims with Germany's deepest traditional neuroses, with chaos beyond its eastern border and with Russia. They demand lower priority for Brussels and all that, and higher priority in the east. And now even the grandest of German grandees are toying out loud with the ultimate heresy, that the whole European Union of the treaties of Rome and Maastricht may be yesterday's answer to the day before's problem.
In my mind, the concept of a European Union centralizing decision-making power more and more in the hands of a kind of European government called the Commission, and so this was a post-war concept, and it was very useful and has done us great benefits after the war, but it's a concept of the past in many respects, because the world has changed. And now we are getting a completely new union, including Eastern Europe, including Scandinavia, etc. And maybe Germany would be a kind of catalyst for this new world which is emerging in Eastern Europe.
This thesis is the darkest of heresies to Chancellor Kohl, and orthodox authorities like Professor Michael Stormer, who advises Kohl, are disturbed by any signs that it's gaining ground. They're ever ready to quote Germany's first post-war Chancellor, Konrad Adenauer: "The more scared you are of Germany's past, the more you've got to lock its future into a European structure. All the more so now that Germany's united."
German unification is only safe within a broader European framework, context, integration. I think that's one of the great lessons of history. So for the Chancellor, much as for Adenauer, economic unification and now monetary unification is a means to an end. And we must go for that end.
It's 50 years on for the Ludwigshafen Christian Democrat Party, and its national leader is home to honour its long past and its veterans. But his real concern is for the immediate future, for the chance which the IGC gives him before the end of next year to enshrine in marble the constitution of the country called Europe. With a general election due in 2.5 years, he knows that his chance of fulfilling his life work, political union centred on Brussels, is now or never.
The Germans, I think, have learned two powerful lessons this century. Whenever they went it alone, World War I, World War II, they failed ever more disastrously, at ever more horrible cost. Point two, second lesson, post-45, when the Germans stopped acting like Germans, when they went for community, for integration, for multilateralism, they flourish beyond belief. And today, as a result, the Germans, for the first time in their history, are surrounded only by friends. And I suggest that this twin lesson will continue to have a very powerful hold on the consciousness of this country. You don't throw something away which has been so enormously successful for you.
Perhaps over the next 10 years, Germany's Eurosceptics may become much stronger. But on the 24th of March, the Chancellor brushed aside the opposition challenge in the local elections, which failed badly. For now, Kohl remains in undisputed command of the government and of its position in the negotiations with the rest of Europe. So where does that leave the British government's battle plan hope that the whole thing will melt away? What we've found in Germany shows that that flank of its defences is already overrun. And that leaves the veto, its weapon of last resort. The veto means that any country, such as Britain, can stop any decision in Brussels that has to be unanimous, such as constitutional changes and foreign policy actions.
Any changes in the treaty require unanimity, and we have made it abundantly clear that we are not prepared to countenance moves towards the kind of supranational structure that is still the aspiration of some of our partners.
Britain may well be not prepared, but the aspiration of some of our partners clearly already amounts to a concerted strategy.
I think they're likely to try to pursue a three-pronged strategy. The first being the route of persuasion, the second the route of pressure, and if all else fails, thirdly the route of exclusion.
It was here in Baden-Baden in December that the German Chancellor and the French President Jacques Chirac met to plot how they would prevent British obstruction of their plans for final political and monetary union. At the end, they were sure that we have ways of making you cooperate. First amongst these was to be a new clause removing the right of individual members of the European Union to veto future constitutional change. It was this protection which, 25 years ago, Edward Heath as Prime Minister promised Parliament would guarantee British interests and liberties. Kohl and Chirac agreed that they would promote a new treaty clause limiting that veto power on which the British rely. If agreed, no one would be allowed to stop the rest from going forward to ever greater political union, so long as the door remained open for any laggards to join in later. In theory, this new rule could itself be vetoed, but it has powerful backers who will not easily be brushed aside.
We don't want to exclude anyone in Europe. What we also don't want, to use a German saying, is that the slowest ship in the convoy sets the speed for the future.
Here in Strasbourg, the French home of the European Parliament, that speed for the future looks lightning, as the Parliament, which will preside over the new Europe, is leaping out of the ground almost as fast as the new Berlin. The same relentless earth-moving methods also seem likely to be applied to British objections and defences, veto or no veto. Britain's treasured freedom to conduct an independent foreign and defence policy is the first rampart to be thus targeted.
We will not allow Brussels to control our defence policy. With a Conservative government, we will not join a single European army.
A common foreign policy without a common army would, as the Germans say, be like music without instruments.